in the Prime Minister and the government.
Mr. Poilievre, seconded by Mr. Muse, moves that I, whereas the leader of the New Democratic Party said he ripped up his supply and confidence agreement with the Liberal government. 2, whereas the NDP leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. And 3, whereas the NDP leader said the Liberal government will always cave to corporate greed and always step up to make sure the unions have no power. In response to the Liberal Labour Minister's referral to the Canadian Industrial Relations Board that ordered the workers of the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference and the ILWU 514 to resume their duties, violating their right to strike. Therefore, the House agrees with the NDP leader that the House proclaims it has lost the confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. The honourable member for the honourable leader of the official opposition.
Today in a spirit of non-partisanship, to put our differences aside and take a good idea and a good perspective, no matter where it comes from. You know, too often in this place, we refuse to accept ideas or input from other people. And so I thought I would remedy that by taking the words and the message of the leader of the NDP, putting them in a conservative motion, so that all of us could vote for the very wise things that he said. So allow me, in the spirit of this nonpartisan spirit, to read off the motion that we have here. Common sense conservative motion, whereas the leader of the NDP said he has ripped up his supply and confidence agreement with the Liberal government, whereas the NDP leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people, whereas the NDP leader said the Liberal government will always cave to corporate greed and always step in to make sure the unions have no power. And he said that in response to the Liberal Labour Minister's referral to the Canadian Industrial Relations Board that ordered the workers of Teamsters Canada Rail Conference and the ILWU 514 to resume their duties, violating their right to strike. Therefore, the House agrees with the NDP leader, and the House proclaims that it has lost confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. The NDP leader. I know that he is enjoying the praise we're giving him. So let's go through point by point, as I know the member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry will take up as I'm splitting my time with him. But let's go through point by point to prove the charge of the NDP leader. He says the Liberals are too weak. Well, he's right about that. The economy is weak, having lost $500 billion of net investment out to the United States, having shrunk the last 8 quarters in a row on a per capita basis, having seen the productivity per hour worked in Canada drop for 6 quarters in a row. Our economy is now smaller than it was 10 years ago, and we've gone from having median incomes equal to American median incomes to the present, where the American worker makes $22,000 more. Our economy is shrinking in per capita terms. The cost of living is out of reach. We have 2 million people lined up at food banks. We have double the housing costs, the worst housing price inflation in the G7. Vancouver and Toronto are the most expensive housing markets on planet Earth, in all of North America. And so we recognize that economically, the Liberals have made the country weak. And then there's politically weak. Right. And this Prime Minister has lost the support not only of Canadians, who overwhelmingly want to fire him, but of his own party. In fact, the Liberal leader in Ontario has said that his carbon tax is wrong. Right. How could she not say that? It will quadruple over the next 5 years, bringing economic nuclear winter to our country, emptying our shelves of groceries, driving even more people into starvation. Then the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland has said that the Prime Minister's energy cap will kill jobs in that province. And then 20 Liberal MPs want to fire him. But it's also gone to his own cabinet, right in the middle of a potential trade dispute with incoming President Trump. You would assume that the foreign minister of all ministers, if she were to appear in the New York Times, would be doing so to fight against the tariffs. But instead, she was in the New York Times with the following headline: New York Times, tapped by the Prime Minister to steer foreign affairs. She's now his possible successor. That is the Foreign Minister.
Point of order from the Deputy House Leader.
He's not even remotely good at what he's trying to do. You know he's trying to use a prop, Mr. Speaker. Can you please call?
No. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition, I'll just remind him to keep that down.
Mr. Speaker, for him to dismiss the Foreign Minister in that way is outrageous. The reality is she's the one who chose to go to a photo shoot in a studio with the New York Times in an article about how she is the possible successor to her own boss. So you would expect a foreign minister, of all ministers, would be busy fighting tariffs with our biggest trading partner. Instead, she's fighting to replace her boss. On penserait qu'une...
You might think that a Minister of Foreign Affairs would be working hard to prevent tariffs. But instead, she went to the New York Times for a long article which spoke of her as a possible replacement to her leader. That shows weakness.
The leader, the Liberal Prime Minister, is weak. Is he selfish? Well, Mr. Speaker, what else could you call it? When he's treated himself to illegal vacations to private islands, when he's lavished himself with constant gifts and benefits, when he's shut down Parliament numerous times to cover up scandals, while he's refusing to allow Canadians to see, to have accountability for the $400 million missing dollars in the Green Slush Fund scandal, and while he protects his own trust fund from the tax increases he imposes on everyone else, one can only think that this is selfish. And while, most of all, he stays in power, even seeing the devastating consequences this is having on the lives of everyday Canadians, that is nothing if not selfish. And then we move to the charge that the NDP leader makes that the Prime Minister is attacking the rights of workers. Mr. Speaker, of this there is no doubt. We see the leader of the NDP. He's gone to rallies at places where courageous workers are striking in order to recuperate many of the lost wages that have resulted from government-induced inflation. Exactly. We know we had more strikes last year than in any year since 1983, a 40-year high. We have, of course, Canada Post workers on strike, doing that strike now lasting a long time and doing incredible damage to small business. Hopefully it will come to an end soon, but the NDP leader showed up at these strikes and said, and I quote, "If there is any vote in Parliament that in any way impacts your rights, we are going to vote no. I can tell you right now, we'll vote no, whether that vote is a confidence vote or not, whether that vote triggers an election or not. I'm telling the Prime Minister and the Liberals right now, you're never going to count on us if you're going to take away the rights of workers. Never," he said, Mr. Speaker. What a powerful statement. Never, and absolutely categorical. So surely he would vote on this motion, keeping his word to those workers, or was he looking them straight in the eye and telling them a plain falsehood? Will he go back to them after this vote and tell them that when it came down to putting his vote where his words was, he just didn't have the courage, that he was under too much pressure, that the fear of losing an election and facing the voters and facing the music for his own record was too much for him, and therefore he backed down and he turned his back on those workers and left them out in the cold? Is that what he's going to tell those union workers, Mr. Speaker? Right. And if so, how will they ever believe anything he says to them again? Right. The answer is that they, of course, could not. But if the NDP leader does decide to vote against his own words, it will mean two things. One, that he does not want to take responsibility for his own record. He doesn't want voters to have the ability to judge his record and his plans because he fears that they will render a verdict that is not in his favor. The second thing it will reveal is that in the next election, there are not 5 parties running, there are not 4 parties running, there are 2 parties running. That's right. There is the NDP-Bloc Liberal coalition that tax your food, punish your work, double your housing cost, unleash crime and chaos in your community, or common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. That is the choice.
That's right.
It is a binary choice. You vote for the NDP, you get the Liberals. You vote for the Liberals, you get the NDP. You vote for the Bloc, you get both the NDP and the Liberals. And if you are among the grand majority of Canadians who is unsatisfied with the downward spiral of our country, with the broken borders, broken immigration system, broken economy, if you want to bring home Canada's promise again and restore a country where hard work earns a powerful paycheck and pension that buys affordable food and homes in safe neighborhoods, where anyone from anywhere can do anything in the freest nation on earth, in Canada, then let's bring it home.
Hear, hear.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Look, in this House and in other public settings, there's been a member of Parliament, I'll let the leader guess which one, but that member's been here for about 20 years, has a big pension, and I want to give him a couple of quotes and perhaps he could comment on them. One, unions have the power to shut down a workplace. Legal powers give the union a state-enforced monopoly on labor. This member spoke of, quote, fattened union contracts. Wow. This member allowed right-to-work legislation, that's optional union membership, in his party's platform. And that member cannot, quote, comprehend that union firms can be competitive with non-union ones. I wonder if that member of Parliament could explain those comments that he's made about working people in this country.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the member can distort my record instead of defending his own. He is the part of the government, this former corporate lobbyist and party staffer who spent his time making money off the political system, can explain why he and his government have presided over the largest number of strikes in the last 40 years of Canadian history. Never have there been more strikes than since 1983, and they have consistently, Liberals, with the help of the NDP, have overpowered the rights of workers to carry out those strikes and used their legal authority to rob workers of their autonomy and their independent decision-making, Mr. Speaker. That is their record. And by the way, it is the first time in our history that people with good union jobs cannot afford homes. Right. It is the first time in history that en masse union workers are lined up at food banks. Mr. Speaker, that is the tragic record of this broken government. That's why we need a common-sense Conservative government will bring home the country we knew and loved.
Question et commentaire. L'honorable député de Jonquière.
The honourable member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, I won't try to hide the fact that sometimes I struggle to follow the Leader of the Official Opposition. He often has said that teachers were stepping down because there was no more heating in schools, or that nurses were leaving their jobs because of a lack of heating in their hospitals. But he's never proposed any solutions. And thinking back to what he said not long ago, he said that electricians can seize lightning in their hands and use that to wire a house. Wouldn't they be able to use these extraordinary skills to heat hospitals and schools then? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Yes, electricians would be capable of providing heating in schools and in hospitals. And electricians do have exceptional skills thanks to their experience and other good qualities, and I admire that, which is why I use this poetic metaphor to describe people working in the skilled trades. And I think the fact that I use this poetic language shows once again that the Conservative Party loves the arts, and I would be happy to use further poetic language to help the Bloc Québécois understand common sense. and to understand our solutions, which includes axing the taxes that force provinces to fire nurses and teachers in order to be able to pay the heating bills. We will axe those taxes and we will support nurses and teachers.
And comments, the honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Hamilton Centre, Mr.
Sorry, Hamilton Centre.
That's okay. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member from the Conservative Party, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Conservative Party would be laughable if his hypocrisy wasn't so ridiculous. He stood up right now in his opening remarks and exposed himself. This man has never been to a picket line. He called it a rally for striking workers. This leader fought aggressively against card check legislation. He was one of the loudest supporters of the anti-union Bill C-377. He also is proudly one of the loudest proponents of the U.S. right-to-work legislation. So my question is simple. Despite all of his cosplay, we've seen he can't even put on a high-vis vest, has this member ever once in his life actually visited a picket line?
We are almost out of time. Allow the honourable leader of the opposition to answer.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Resuming debate.